Chapter 8, Yom Kippur with the Cherokee. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, on Yom Kippur it is sealed, how many will pass on, how many shall come to be, who shall live and who shall die, who shall live to see ripe age and who shall perish. Jewish Yom Kippur service. By all accounts, the Cherokee did not observe the sort of animistic, shamanistic spirituality practiced by many of their neighbors. They were scornful of the barbaric rites of the sweat lodge, sun dance, and coming-of-age rituals of the Siouan tribes, as reported by 18th century explorer John Lawson. Mexico, they said, was inhabited by 6 tribes of cannibals. They had hardly any better opinion of the cruel Sutis and grisly boneyards of the Natchez. In a series of articles about the religion of American Indians appearing in 1862, Cherokee newspaperman John Rowland Ridge wrote that they, in general, rejected the preaching of the missionaries. As evidence, he reprinted the famous speech of Red Jacket. When questioned whether Christians worshipped the true God, the Seneca chief replied that he would wait and see if their religion made them behave any the better. Ridge held that the Cherokee took their religion from the ancient Greeks, Persians, Jews, and Chaldeans. They were superior in this respect, as in many others, the Athabascan, the Algonquin, the Iroquois, the Dakota, the Appalachian, the Chickarean, and the Natchez. Important sources for Cherokee religion are the papers of Presbyterian missionary Daniel S. Butrick, 1798 to 1851, and pamphleteer John Howard Payne, housed in the Newberry Library in Chicago. John Payne was an indefatigable activist on behalf of Indian rights, who was often remembered only as author of Home Sweet Home. Of a Long Island Jewish family, he became an adopted Cherokee tribe member. In later years, he served as American consul to Tunis. The Payne papers include accounts of the 7 Cherokee festivals and other aspects of the history, culture, and religion of the tribe. One salient feature in them is the weight given to stories of Wasi, Cherokee for Moses. Wasi is more important than Jesus for the Cherokee, notes Butrick. Most commentators see this as evidence that the Cherokee learned Bible stories from traders. Given what we know now about the Cherokee, however, these stories possibly predate Jewish traders of the 18th century. Might they not, like the name Elohi, actually be vestiges of the Cherokee's Mediterranean origins? If Jews were not on board from the beginning, they certainly had arrived in Cherokee country by Roman times. In the 1960s, Mina Aronowicz was working in her flower bed on Cedar Street in Columbus, Georgia, when she dug up a bronze Roman coin. It bore the image of Antoninus Pius, Emperor 135 to 161 CE. Archaeologists often dismiss such finds because they do not come to light in the course of an official excavation. Who is to say someone did not plant a Roman coin in Mina Aronowicz's garden? Perhaps it was a souvenir brought over by early settlers. The same dismissal, however, cannot be accorded to the Bat Creek stone. This small stone, engraved with Hebrew, was exhumed in a mound containing the skeletons of an East Tennessee chief and 8 retainers by the Smithsonian Institution in 1889. Bat Creek is a tributary of the Little Tennessee River in Cherokee country, about 30 miles southwest of Knoxville. The stone's reference to the Jewish hero Simon Bar Kokhba seems genuine, a connection first made by Cyrus Gordon. Discovered directly beneath the skull of the dignitary whose burial it marks, it proclaims, "Comet for the Jews," a slogan of the revolt against Rome in 132 to 135 CE. This final bid for nationalistic sovereignty in ancient times was led by Simon Bar Kokhba, whose name means son of the star. It is a short leap to wonder whether the elite personage of the tomb was either a relative or leader of survivors from Bar Kokhba's revolt. Who interred these warriors? From the elaborateness of the entombment, it must have been their own people, an enclave of compatriots. That the burial is not an isolated instance of Jewish settlement in the region seems clear from coin finds. Coins struck during Bar Kokhba's regime have been extracted in Kentucky, Louisville, 1932, Clay City, 1952, Hopkinsville, 1967, and in southeastern Missouri from the St. Francis, a tributary of the Mississippi, 1922. They read in Hebrew, Simon, lower right, around to lower left on the obverse, and year 2, 133 AD, of the deliverance of Israel on the reverse. All these pieces of the puzzle converge on Melungeon territory. A similar lead comes from the Ramey family of Tennessee, an unrecognizable type of writing that turned up in the family's North Carolina attic in the 1990s. The script was written by Thomas Ramey, a circuit preacher and spy, and coded messages during the Civil War in Tennessee. It stymied most experts until identified as a variety of demotic Coptic cipher script, similar to ones long used in Alexandria in Egypt. The substantial hoard of writings continues to be kept under wraps by the family, out of fear their contents might get them into trouble. The Rameys, like many other mentioned in this book, were evidently Marranos. The origin and meaning of this term is disputed, but it appears to have first gained currency in the mid-15th century anti-Jewish riots in Toledo and Cordova. Its heyday for usage was the 16th century, when Jews escaping Spain and Portugal to other Catholic countries were denounced as Judaizers by the Inquisition and Spanish crown. According to an entry in the Jewish Encyclopedia, the wealthy Marranos, who engaged extensively in commerce, industries, and agriculture, intermarried with the families of the old nobility. Impoverished counts and marquises unhesitatingly wedded wealthy Jewesses, and it also happened that counts or nobles of the blood royal became infatuated with handsome Jewish girls. Beginning with the second generation, the Neo-Christians usually intermarried with women of their own sect. They became very influential through their wealth and intelligence, and were called to important positions at the palace, in government circles, and in the Cortes. They practiced medicine and law, and taught at the universities, while their children frequently achieved high ecclesiastical honors. None of the usual explanations given for the origin of the term Marrano seems compelling, least of all the suggestion that the word is derived from Spanish marrano, wild pig. Certainly over-ingenious is Hebrew scholar B. Netanyahu's claim that it comes from a haplologic contraction of the Hebrew mumaranas, which caused the omission of the first syllable, affecting the transformation mumaranas, maranus, marano, marano. If we look it up in Latin dictionaries before the modern period, we find nothing about pigs, only a definition in civil jurisprudence of maranus as privileged Jewish administrator who feigns to be Christian. Evidently, the Egyptian title Moran, meaning something like sir, may have been carried by the conquering Arabs to Spain and retained for use in their civil administration. It then gave birth to Spanish Marrano, and survived in common Jewish surnames, Moran, as well as in Marianne, a favored name for girls in Jewish, Cherokee, and Melungeon families. One doubts that the Moran and Moreno families of France, Scotland, and Italy are embarrassed by the thought that their name might mean pig in Spanish. Whatever the antiquity of the Jewish strain in Cherokee religion, it is clearly pre-rabbinical and pre-diaspora. It is reminiscent of a state religion, like that practiced by the Jews in their homeland before the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans in 70 CE. James Adair reaches a similar conclusion. The Indian system is derived from the moral, ceremonial, and judicial laws of the Hebrews. Though now but a faint copy of the divine original, their religious rites, martial customs, dress, music, dances, and domestic forms of life seem clearly to evince also that they came to America in early times, before sects had sprung up among the Jews, which was soon after their prophets ceased, and before arts and sciences had arrived to any perfection. Otherwise, it is likely they would have retained some knowledge of them, at least where they first settled. These words indicate he thought that the Cherokee Jew belonged to the time of the First Temple, circa 1000 BCE, or even before. Yet, on the basis of a detailed comparison of religious rites, it is really not necessary to place their origins earlier than the inauguration of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 516 BCE, and reorganization of Jewish religion under Ezra beginning in 458 BCE. Jewish customs could have been planted in the Appalachians as late as the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, to judge from the Bat Creek stone. The Cherokees' celebration of the New Year seems to reflect Jewish practices in the style and fashion of the Second Temple. The Cherokee reckoned the start of the New Year on the first new moon of the first month of autumn, Tishri, in the Hebrew calendar. For the Brooklyn Jew, as well as the Oklahoma Cherokee, this falls sometime between September 5th and October 5th. Ever since the Second Temple, this date inaugurates the days of awe or repentance, and it ushers in the most holiday-intensive period of the year, a season focused on purification and renewal. According to 1st century CE Jewish philosopher Philo of Alexandria, an old name for Rosh Hashanah, head of the year, is the day of the sacred moon. In Cherokee, this holiday is called the Great New Moon Festival. In both cultures, the New Year is followed after exactly 8 days by a second holy day, considered the most important of the entire year cycle. Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement in the Jewish faith, and the solemn propitiation festival in Cherokee religion bear the same name. Both follow the New Year by a week. The similarities do not end there. The Jewish conception of the New Year is a time of reflection, of coming to terms with the past year of purification, resolutions, and predictions. Jews of old believed that the Almighty One maintained books in which he wrote the names of those who will live and those who will die in the coming year. Hence the greeting of temple congregants to each other. May you be inscribed and sealed for a good year. Hence also the passage in Yom Kippur service. What was written on Rosh Hashanah is sealed on Yom Kippur. During Rosh Hashanah, devout Jews tongue to symbolize the head of the year. So also on the Cherokee New Year, hunters present the tongue of the first killed buck deer to the uku. This he uses for a sacrifice, while the priests conduct divinatory exercises with crystals to determine which of the people are to die before the first new moon of the following spring. In Jewish observance, the afternoon of Rosh Hashanah is occupied by a second ceremony associated with the new year, Tashlich, casting away. This involves going to water and casting away the sins of the previous year. The Cherokee engage in a remarkable enactment of the same rite. 2 hours before sunset, the Uku's principal assistant ordered men went upstream and the women and children went downstream. Everyone quickly faced east, the direction of Jerusalem, and plunged entirely under the water. Some people followed the custom of wearing old clothing, and while in the water, they disrobed and let the old clothing float away. This carried all their impurities away with it. Between the first and second holy day, Cherokees fast on the fourth day, an apparent echo of the Jewish fast of Gedaliah on Tishri 3. In Cherokee practice, their day of cementation is preceded by a 24-hour period of fasting. It has a special liturgy with a unique melody, just like the Kol Nidre, vows of Yom Kippur. Adair notes the similarity of the music in both cases. This is also the time, Adair says, when the ancient hymn, Yehovah, was sung. Of this hymn, informants observed that it could only be sung by selected persons on occasions of the greatest solemnity. The hymn played a special role in the exciting Cementation Festival, Day of Reconciliation, that is, Yom Kippur. The words were described as being part of the old language. The Cherokee Propitiation Festival seems to reflect a third holiday of the Jewish High Holy Days, Sukkot, Festival of the Tabernacles. Portions of this very old holiday seem to be incorporated in the harvest celebration called the Exalting, or Bounding Bush Festival. Like Jews today with their myrtle boughs, the Cherokee shake white pine sprigs to all the directions. In the Propitiation Festival, they sing the great Hoshana, noticed above, Please Save Us, and purify their dwellings, both important aspects of the Jewish Sukkot observance. Cherokees sanctify the whole town by beating sycamore wands against the eaves of buildings. At the end of Sukkot, on the seventh day, Jews make 7 circuits about their tabernacle and then beat willow branches against the floor after singing the Hosanna. Hebrew priests of the temple in Jerusalem carried crystals about their necks called Urim and Thummim, lights and protections. Known as the perfect light, these crystals were carried in the breastplate of the Hebrew high priest. They were consulted on decisions of war and peace, and borne into battle as well as used to divine God's will on crucial occasions in a ritual held before the Holy of Holies. Cherokee priests entrusted with carrying their ark took the ikakate, seeing stones, on war parties. At home they wore the divinatory crystals about their necks, and looked to them on the most solemn occasions to foretell the future. At the New Moon Festival, the Cherokee equivalent of the High Holy Days, people approached the priest after purification to discover whether they would live for another year. The priest gazed into his crystal, another name for which is ulumsta. If he saw the supplicant's figure upright, they would live. If the shape was cloudy, they may fall sick. If broken, they may be injured. And if prostrate, they would die before the next New Moon Festival. The alternative name of the divining crystal seems to be Ionic Greek, from the aorist particle for the verb ulo, to be well, used in the same sense as the Latin salutation salve. Finally, like the ancient Romans and Greeks and Jewish people with their mikvah, the Cherokee of old set great store in ritual bathing. They were so fond of going to water that they were even called hydrocentric. The ethnographer Raymond Fogelson described it as the nation's passion and says it was so ingrained that Christian missionaries had to select another word to translate baptism, agawoda, meaning washed clean.